Now when it comes to bad weather, I'm pretty resilient as allotment users go, but it started raining on Friday. It rained all through Saturday, all through Sunday. Monday was mostly rain, and today is absolutely tipping it down. So I'm going to take a look at the plot this morning while I do the chickens and just see whether there's any opportunity at all. Let's take a look. That gives you an idea of the sort of levels of rain we've had. And it's absolutely chucking it down now. My boot washer's filled up. I suppose one positive is that my membrane on the fruit garden is getting a thorough wash. We've got one raspberry that's gone over. Now you can see the pooling of water in between my squash bed, and boy is it squelchy underfoot. Very careful along here. I get a few areas where the rain seems to pool. One of them's my main path here, which is desperate for some more chippings. Right, I'll get in and do these chicks, and we'll go over and have a look at the routine in the morning with these girls is to lift their carpet flaps, which are there for a bit of extra protection and warmth. And oh, we've got an egg, and Puff's always the first one out because she tends to sleep on the bottom and the other two on the top, but they don't take long to come out. Get that one over there. Right, on to the other girls. I'm sorry if you're getting a couple of drops of rain on the lens. I think that's the way it's going to be today. This is a really squelchy bit. Well, they're all waiting for me. And we put their food up at nights just to make sure we don't get any rat visitors, and then I bring it down in the mornings. There's quite a lot in there at the moment. There we go, girls. Pretty dark in here at the minute, but then they do want to get eating as soon as they get up. So a quick look round, see whether we've got any eggs this morning. And this path is absolutely sodden. Right. Oh, 2 nice brown eggs this morning. So we'll be right for breakfast. There we go. Well, I don't think I'm going to be doing anything on the plot today. It's just too wet, and you can see the water basically running down the length of the plot, and it's continual rain just makes it like a quagmire, and to be perfectly honest, it's dangerous. So right, get these eggs into the shed. Okay, well, I think I've made my mind up. I think it's going to be an indoor job today. Oh, look at all those daffodils. Won't be long before they're flowering. What I did want to do at some point is give you a walk around our allotments. It's not the best time of year because most people have got their allotments dormant at this time of year and they're waiting for better weather, but I will do that shortly. Wow, it's nice to be indoors and not out in that rain. So what I thought I'd do today, because the weather's so inclement, is one of those jobs that's got to be done. I've sorted out what seeds I'm going to grow, but I've got to get that into some sort of order. And one or two of you have started to ask me when I'm going to start sowing in earnest. Well, it's not too long now. And what I thought I'd do is just go through and try and establish when I'm going to sow things and show you the approach that I have. There's a few onion seeds escaped here. You'll notice that I've got this in a plastic bag and these loose, and it's a very simple system. These have been sown, and once I've sown, they come out of the bag and they go loose into the container. So I don't need to worry about those onions. And it doesn't mean I won't go back to them. If I have any failed germination, then they're there and ready. But I've got all these, which I seem to have quite a lot of varieties here, but it's been reasonably well thought out. What you do need to do is calculate what month I'm going to put what into sowing seed trays. And well, I've done all sorts of approaches with this. I've been extremely scientific before now. I've had spreadsheets and big plans, I've used apps, and gradually those things have fallen by the wayside, and now I tend to use the information on the back of the packet coupled with a bit of instinct, because whilst these are an extremely good guideline that gets added to the packet in most cases, you've always got to make some sort of allowance for your weather and your temperatures. So it can be a little bit different. And the other thing I would say is I've often missed the premium time to sow things. That hasn't really had a massive impact in this. I've missed it by a very big period of time. And I sow many things in the polytunnel and they come on quite quickly. So you can recover. You don't have to be too concerned if you miss the peak moment. Okay, this is how I'm going to go about it. So we're now in, well, middle of February, and I don't think I'm going to be sowing anything else until we hit March. And March is quite a key month, as is April. So, you know, there's beginning of March and end of March, and I'm not going to get into that amount of detail at this stage. What I am going to do is have March here, April here, May, and maybe something in June. So I'm going to make just 4 simple piles, and I'm going to go through and work out what goes in what pile. And then I'll just band those up with a rubber band. And while I'll only hit March when March comes, and I won't be sorting through all the others, the idea is it makes it fairly straightforward and I sort of know what I'm doing. So let's start. And some of these things haven't got any timings on them at all, and I'm going to put those to one side and then solve that problem. So this is tomato seeds. It says sow under glass in the colder months and then transplant outside once the weather allows. Well, my Roma are not going outside at all. They're going to stay in the polytunnel all their life. But I could see me sowing those at the back end of March, so that's fine. And here we have dwarf cherry tomato, and the instructions in this one is sow in modules or trays in late February to early April. So you can see the span for tomatoes, really late February to early April. And with the cold weather that we get in this area, I'm not going to bother trying to sow tomatoes until we get into March. So that's a March. This is Latar, another tomato, same story, February to March. So this brown packet is my own saved seed, which I'm really looking forward to growing. But that's Latar as well. So those two go together, all in March. I've come across some flowers now. We've got Tagetes. It says germination takes a couple of weeks, sow March in a greenhouse. You can see how busy March gets. celeriac. So this is February, March, April, March, more celeriac, March, celeriac, March. That's 3 different varieties. The beetroots, March, April, May, June and July. So given that March is becoming quite a busy period already, looking at what I've got in the March pile, I can make a decision sometimes just to move the workload, and I might move those into April. So we'll put those there just to keep on top of things. This is leeks, which that's a variety I haven't sown, but I have sown a lot. So they can go in the waiting to see if everything germinates pile. This is spring onions. So this is February, March, April, May. Well, my onions are in, and these for us are only used as sort of salad onions. So I think, again, looking at the amount of work, I'll probably move that into April. And here we've got basil. So this is a real heat lover. And this says for outdoor cultivation, so February to June. So again, could go in either of these piles. I'm going to put it in April for now. And I'm already thinking that if I succeed in getting all my March seeds in good time, I'll need to look at April to see whether there's anything I want to drag back into March. That's fine. Rocket, April, May, June and July. I'm going to put that in May. And cucumber, Ridge, Market More. So this is April, May. Well, I seem to have quite a struggle in getting cucumbers going. So I definitely need to have that in April. And you can see by that example how I am deciding about when to do things based on my own experiences and not just the packet. So this one's sow indoors, sow outdoors, March, April, May, June and July. And this is parsley. So that's going to go into May. Sweet basil, so indoors, January, February, March, April, May. Again, this is tended to be quite slow for me, so probably April when it warms up. There's some saved seed. Pumpkins, so pumpkins need an interesting one. So I've tended to grow pumpkins or sow them fairly early, and then been disappointed at the germination rates. And each season I've sort of pushed it out a bit so that I don't plant them too early, and they still seem to be perfectly fine. They catch up, as many things do. So this says sow April, May. We're going to put that into May. Okay. Courgettes. So courgettes, April, May. The courgettes will go out fairly rapidly, so I'm going to put that in April. So April's now piling up, and here we've got another squash, so that's going to go into May. Salad leaves, basically you can sow under glass from January, so I'm going to be putting all those salad leaf things together in April. Swede, definitely didn't have enough swede this year. So it wants them sown outdoors. I don't sow swede outdoors. I sow it into modules in the polytunnel and then plant it out when I know that the plant's reasonably well formed. So this is saying sow outdoors in May, June, July. So for me to get those going, I'm going to do those in April. Parsnips, sow outdoors from February. And again, I don't sow these outdoors. I sow them indoors and then transplant in toilet rolls. So I can get these going a bit earlier for a longer season. So I'm going to get those going in March this year. Greyhound cabbage. This is sow outdoors from March. So I think that's going to move into April. And exactly the same for Filderkraut. A lot of you are asking me to say the name of this again. So there we are, Filderkraut. And that one is sow outdoors from February. So I think probably I'll grow those in March. Calabrese, April, May. That's going to go April. Courgette, Ambassador. So this says nothing about sowing times. So I've got my other courgettes, I think, growing from April. So they can go in there. Kale, March to April. So I think looking at how small my March pile is now, I'm going to bring those back to March. That's Ursa, more Russian kale. And again, this is April, May. So I think probably I'm going to move those into May. And all I'm really doing now is spreading the workload around so that it's manageable. And as you can see, there are things that I could move very easily from one month to the other. And if I get on top of things, that's what I'll do. And what else? That's squash, spaghetti squash, which is going to go into April or May, in this case May. Squash in May, squash in May, squash in May. Little gem squash in May. And then I've got my broad beans, which I'm actually going to start growing pretty soon. So they're going to go in March at the moment to make me look at them. And what does that leave me? Some marigolds, which I'm going to do in April. And I've got sweet candle carrot. So sow in drills between April and June. So I think we're going to go April. And this is flowers, lobelia, lobelia, lobelia. I've got an awful lot of lobelia. So those lobelias are to be sown January and April under cover. So that's sounding like something that I could get going early. So what I'm going to do is split these. I've got 2 different varieties here, 3 different varieties. Cambridge, Cambridge, Cambridge. So I think I'm going to get some early Cambridge going and do the trailing and Riviera Blue Splash in April with a bit extra Cambridge Blue. So that just leaves my coriander, and coriander will come along in the warmth reasonably quickly. So I'm going to go April. And then I've got my runner beans, which really I deal with separately, but they will be probably March, April time. So you can see what I've got here is a fair old workload in March, the bulk of my sowing in April, some May, mainly squash and some herbs, a little bit of kale, and that's about it. And then May, I could start some purple early sprouting broccoli and probably do 2 or 3 tranches of that, because by that time, the things that I've grown here are moving out into the plot. So that's the methodology. And as you can see, it's a little bit random. It's certainly not done precisely, and it's never caused me any great problems. And people will have their own very firm opinions about when to sow what, and might look at what I've just said and say, I wouldn't grow this then, or I wouldn't grow that then. And that's perfectly all right. It's whatever's good for you. And if you don't succeed in germination, you can always sow a few more seeds later on. Because one thing is very clear, this is enough seed for many years, and I can sow just a few of these. And a good example would be the Filderkraut. This package, I'm just trying to say 350 seeds, and I'm probably going to grow 6. So if I sowed those in March and something didn't go exactly to plan, then I could sow some more in April. I could even sow some more in May, and it might mean that I end up with a smaller plant when it's at the peak time, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. But that 350 seeds will last me many, many years. Okay, well, I hope that's been helpful. It's pretty awful weather. So that's it from me today. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope this has been of some use to you and perhaps allayed a few fears. And if it is, that's great news. So if you did like it, then give it a thumbs up or click on the bell and get my updates every Wednesday and Sunday at 8 p.m. and even consider subscribing. Well, I hope the weather's better where you are. Good times.